So today I'm going to do one of the weirdest videos I've ever done, but it's one of my favorite concepts in history, so I'm going to talk about the domino theory once again, because it's the most chaotic thing or chaotic, yeah, it's chaotic, and it's one of the best things in history. So, and yes, you did read the title right. I am going to talk about how Queen Victoria, wanting peace in Europe, led to McDonald's being built in Moscow. The events are completely related if you look at it in the chronological way. So, let's get started. It all starts with Queen Victoria, really her mother. Queen Victoria's mother was a carrier for hemophilia. It's a disease of the blood which can be deadly. She passed the gene on to Queen Victoria herself, but she was a carrier. She was not she didn't have the disease, she just carried the gene. Now Queen Victoria had this theory. If she were to have a lot of children, especially women, because women were easier to, put into royal families, I guess. She would have lots of children, so she could marry them off to every country in Europe. That would mean that every country in Europe would have bloodline that would relate to her. So it would mean greater cooperation, right? So she had a lot of children, like so many. I don't remember the exact number. It was way too many children. And one of the girls, Queen Victoria had was called Alice. Alice was like some of her siblings. She was a carrier of the hemophilia gene. She then passed this gene on to her daughter, Alexandra. This daughter, following on the family tradition of marrying onto royal families, would go on to marry sorry, I was going for a bit more suspense, but I can't think of the word. He would marry the Tsarevich of Russia, the son of Alexander III, and that is future Tsar Nicholas II. And Alexandra, she was also, like I said, the carrier of the hemophilia gene, and she had with Nicholas 5 children. The last of which was a son, Alexei, who sadly had hemophilia. He wasn't just a carrier, he actually had the disease. Now, here is where it kind of branches off into 2 different parts. First of all, not really, not yet. So first of all, Alexei, like I said, he had hemophilia. Problem is, the Tsar and the Tsarina had been trying for years to have a son because they needed a male heir. They couldn't have a female heir. I mean, they could have, but they wanted a male heir. So he tried again. And the last child they had was a male. Problem is, he had the disease, which was kind of deadly at the time. And it was a huge problem because if the child fell and cut himself or did whatever, he could die from that. And the entire Russian Empire rested in his hands. So, after consulting with many doctors, things just weren't going well. Probably because they were giving him aspirin. And, they finally found this supposed miracle worker who performed miracles and he claimed that he could cure Alexei. And yes, I am talking about Rasputin. So he allegedly performed little miracles and managed to cure Alexei's bleeding. What actually did probably was stop the doctors from giving the child aspirin, which thins the blood and makes the episodes even worse. So that's that. But because he managed to cure the child, he actually remained in favor with the Russian royal family, imperial family. the Tsar, the Tsarina. Now, when the Tsar went on to fight the the, the First World War, back then the Great War, more on that later, he left the Tsarina in charge. Now she had become so dependent on Rasputin that she had no choice but to, not choice, but she just relied way too heavily on him and gave him the power to make political decisions, to appoint ministers, which were honestly quite incompetent. And this is, I'm talking about 1915, 1916, in the middle of a war, and things weren't going well on the front. Things were not going well at home. It was chaotic. So Rasputin, he was extremely unpopular with other nobles, I guess, and other ministers and political figures, and ended up being assassinated. And this whole Rasputin fiasco put the royal family, the Tsar and the Tsarina and the children, in a really bad position in terms of the political scenario of the time. Now, let's just put that on hold for a second. Now, Queen Victoria, yes, she had thought that by marrying off her children to different countries, she'd get peace, but she didn't account for ambition, I guess. So the main combatants in the war were, on one side, Germany with Kaiser Wilhelm, relative of Queen Victoria, and England with King George V, also relative of Queen Victoria. That didn't work, because if they were both relatives, according to Queen Victoria's theory, they should be peaceful. They should have good relations. Well, no. There was the whole problem of imperialism, nationalism, my country's better than yours, my army's better than yours, blah, 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 so and so. You killed this archduke? No, you didn't. That whole thing. And Russia was kind of dragged into the conflict. Well, not dragged, but yeah. They joined the conflict. And the Allies, so England, weren't especially of great help, despite them being, related. So the disasters in the war and the economic consequences, the chaos, the crisis, both political and social and economic, just set the country in chaos and leading people to lose faith in the Tsar. And that is where my both of the things I've said join. So here you have people losing faith in the Tsar because they trusted this monk who didn't take showers and made really poor political decisions. And this war, the Tsar kept on fighting and actually going into the front lines and failing to see how they could manage it, and just chaos, horrible. So poor military management and poor political management. If you are a person living in Russia by 1917, you're fed up. There had been a revolution against the Tsar in 1905, so the Tsar he knew he wasn't especially liked. He was known as Bloody Nicholas after, the disaster of his coronation ceremony. More on that if you want. I can tell you. You can ask. Anyway, so the Duma, set up after the 1905 revolution, said, okay, enough's enough. We're fed up. We're overthrowing you. And ended up kicking the Tsar out of power. Now the Tsar, he went to his cousins. He went to his cousin in England and in Germany and said, no problem, guys. No problem. They've kicked me out of my country and I literally have nowhere to go. So can I just, hide with you guys? And both countries said no because, surprise, they were knee deep in the war. So the Tsar was forced to stay in Russia and was eventually captured by, people who overthrew him. After a few months after the Duma, well, now the provisional government, overthrew the Tsar in February 1917 or March 1917, depending on the calendar you use, in October or November, yet another revolution took place. This is the most famous one, the Bolshevik Revolution, with Vladimir Lenin, Trotsky, Stalin, the who's who of Russian history names. What's really interesting is that Kaiser Wilhelm actually spent, I think it was $500 million in today's money, sending Lenin like arms and arms, arms, weapons, money, propaganda, and sending an actual train carrying Lenin from Germany to Russia. So he actually, I think Winston Churchill said they carried Lenin like a plague bacillus, like an actual infection just from one country to another, a supposed ally. So that Queen Victoria's desire for peace kind of collapsed. It didn't end up working. So, well, the Tsar got overthrown and in 1918 got killed. And the Bolsheviks, they wanted to establish, they wanted to establish a communist government using some ideology. Now, some people in the country said, no, now that we've overthrown the Tsar, I kind of want to set up a government my way. And you know what happens when one side believes really strongly that they should do things one way, and when the other side also believes really strongly that they should do things another way? Civil war. There was a Russian Civil War from 1918 to 1922, ending in a Bolshevik victory and the establishment of the Soviet Union. 1922. Now, with the premier of Soviet Union being Vladimir Lenin. In 1924, however, Lenin died, and that left the next in line, Stalin, to take over. Could have been Trotsky, but Stalin took over and kind of kicked Trotsky out. They did not get along. It did end in Trotsky being assassinated in 1940 in Mexico. Fun fact, the guy who killed Trotsky, his brother was my father's professor at university. He was a Spanish guy. Anyway, so we're 1930s by this point, and you have this little guy in Germany who says, I want to conquer Europe. Hey, I want to kick the Jews out. Hey. Yes, it is Hitler. And he has plans to conquer Russia. Stalin is not pleased and ends up signing a treaty, having an agreement with the Allies, but they're kind of useless. They don't really offer to help. So instead, he signs the Nazi-Soviet Pact in 1939, August. This leads to the invasion of Poland and, woohoo, Second World War. They're allied with the Nazis, but then 1940, after Operation Barbarossa happened, well, the Russians were, you betrayed me, I'm now going to attack you. And they joined the Allied side and kicked Germany's ass. To put it in a simple way, they kicked Germany's ass. Anyway, after the war was over, and especially in the Yalta and Potsdam conferences, things started to heat up for both the US and the USSR. The US, under Roosevelt and then Truman, believed in capitalism. And they actually promised Stalin that he would be able to have a sphere of influence over Eastern Europe. Now, Stalin, who was an advocate of communism and that kind of dictatorship, took that to mean I can now manipulate everyone and take over and just become ruler of Eastern Europe. Yay! what Churchill, what Roosevelt, and what Truman meant was you can be kind of involved. You can't, sway elections to whatever you want, but you can be there. Now, Stalin, he disagreed, like I said, and after Berlin was, split up and Germany was split up, he was fed up, and the whole Berlin blockade happened, the Berlin airlift. Anyway, Cold War, mainly between the US and the USSR. Now, Stalin died in 1953, leaving a 2-year power vacuum, and then came Khrushchev. You have the whole Bay of Pigs, Cuban Missile Crisis, Kennedy versus Khrushchev. Then Kennedy dies. Then Khrushchev with whole desalinization happens. Then he dies, and by this point, by the time Khrushchev dies, the Soviet Union is kind of collapsing. You have the Hungarian revolution that fails. The Yugoslavia, I think, also did something. I'm not entirely sure on that one. Anyway, the Soviet premier's hold on the Soviet Union was kind of, loosening. Then you have two other guys, someone in Andropov. Then you have Brezhnev, fabulous eyebrows, if I may say so. Look at pictures, the guy had some amazing eyebrows. Anyway, and then we have Gorbachev. Now, Gorbachev, I'm not saying he was an angel by no means, but he did understand how people were fed up after almost 69 years of this oppressive regime. He had glasnost and other policies that kind of made things easier to live with, and started diplomacy with Ronald Reagan, the new president, the president of the US. Well, the Soviet Union kind of started falling apart, and in order to keep the Soviet Union together, just not as the Soviet Union, but as the people, he thought, capitalism, I don't like it, but I need it if I don't want everyone in my country to die, because that's not what you want. And ended up building, surprise, surprise, the first McDonald's in Moscow. This was, by the way, a huge deal. It may not seem like much, but it's a huge deal, because it's a US business, and it was now in the capital of the Soviet Union. St. Petersburg. It was in the deepest Soviet Union. This is a huge, huge deal, and it marked the collapse of the whole communism is like the best, capitalism is horrible, we will never have capitalism in my country. That attitude in the USSR. And the Soviet Union soon collapsed after that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That is literally how Queen Victoria wanting peace led to Soviet Union collapsing and McDonald's in Moscow. So if you live in Moscow and you go to a McDonald's or in Russia, you can thank Queen Victoria. And yeah, I'm gonna leave it there because there's not much else to say. I love the whole idea of domino theory as one of my favorite card games. This is me being a nerd, by the way. But it's just a person saying two events, seemingly unrelated, and then linking them because of the domino effect. Just like one of my favorite things. Because that's literally history, one event leading to another and another and another. It seems so dumb, but it's actually what happens. It's a timeline. People just don't think of it that way, and I love to think of it as dominoes falling. And yeah, that's pretty cool. The piece of history. So I'm gonna leave it there. I hope you liked it. I hope you found it interesting. I definitely did. And yeah, thank you for watching. Bye.